Our climate team here at the office in Jackson, Mississippi, we put together this outlook for this winter going into at least early spring. Usually we try to do this on a yearly basis. I know everybody's really concerned about, they always get concerned about hurricane season and get concerned about the cool season, about rainfall and severe weather. So this is an effort to try to help answer some of those questions as best we can. Some of the main tools we use to look through the winter, through early spring season, to get an idea about what to expect are to look at the INSO mode, the El Nino Southern Oscillation. And I know over the last couple decades, people, even not in the weather business, have heard a lot about this. Basically, you can have two modes, a La Nina, which is where the equatorial sea surface temperatures in the Pacific are a little cooler than normal, and an El Nino where they're a little warmer than normal. And a lot of people may ask, well, what's that have to do with us? But it really affects upstream weather patterns and how that kind of trickles downstream over the continental United States. And can, if you have one mode or the other, it can really help set up over the course of a winter what the temperatures are and how much rainfall you get. So going into this winter, right now, just recently, we got analyzed as just entering a weak La Nina. When your anomalies get to 0.5 Celsius and that equatorial sea surface temperature waters in the Pacific was when you meet the criteria of La Nina, and you can see from this chart that we've just met that. And a lot of these other lines going everywhere are different model forecasts of what these sea surface temperatures are going to do through the course of the winter and the early spring. And most of them expect generally kind of to maybe get a little bit stronger, but for it to remain in the category of a weak La Nina until springtime, when it kind of comes out of that and heads more towards neutral conditions. And that's usually the case. The INSO modes, either El Nino or La Nina, usually develop about this time of year and kind of alleviate when you go into spring. So what we usually see with La Nina is the correlation with our climate over the winter. We usually see a little bit, at least a little bit warmer than normal temperatures and a little bit less rainfall than normal. Now, a lot of those correlations with temperature and precipitation, they get a little better the stronger the mode of the La Nina or El Nino is. In this case, since we're only expected to be dealing with a weak La Nina, we have a little less confidence in warmer than normal temperatures and less precipitation than normal. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Also, going into this outlook, we tried to look back through a lot of years since like the late 40s and 1950, since we've had good INSO data, and look for years where you had the INSO conditions and the trends matching up really well over a span of 24 or 36 months or so. And looking back and trying to match those trends, it seems like 1984 and 85 really matched what we got going on right now. And these other seasons highlighted matched reasonably well also. So what we've kind of done is taken those analog years and looking at how those fared as far as the winter and early spring went, and kind of taking into account with the overall trends that you expect during La Nina to give us some idea of what we could expect for this winter. So one thing to keep in mind, this is a low confidence forecast. One of the reasons it's low confidence is because it's only a weak La Nina. If it were a stronger La Nina, we'd have a little more confidence in trends for this season. Data supports potential for variability, as analog years are not really aligning with typical La Nina patterns, meaning some of these analogs didn't really work out warmer than normal and didn't really work out with precipitation less than normal. But the result could be potential for swings in the weather patterns and for other smaller scale kind of unpredictable global circulations to really dominate our weather at certain times over the winter. Another thing that we like to give an indication of for winter and early spring forecasts is the potential for severe weather. One thing La Nina does tend to correlate with over the cool season for our region is increased severe weather. But like I say, if the La Nina were stronger, we'd have a little better confidence in that. And also looking at the analog years that we outlined in the previous slide, a lot of those didn't really show a lot of severe weather, basically because they were kind of trended pretty cold. So if you look at the analogs on the right, they tend to show less severe weather than is typical over the average cool season. So those are kind of contradictory forecasts where a La Nina would suggest a little more severe weather than is typical, but the specific analogs we looked at show less severe weather than is typical. The winter spring outlook from the Climate Prediction Center, their temperatures on the left is from is kind of highlighting the November, December, January period, showing warmer than normal temperatures, and on the right, January, February, March, still showing warmer than normal temperatures. All that lines up pretty well with the expectation of La Nina conditions through the winter. And you look at their precipitation outlooks, and they show slightly below average rainfall confidence in our area through November, December, January. But once we get into January, February, March time periods, you start to really, that signal for below average precipitation starts shrinking back towards the coast and into the deep south. And generally in La Nina modes, you kind of see this signal where you get enhanced rainfall running from the Mississippi valleys up into the Ohio Valley. And this forecast on the bottom right kind of shows some indication of that, where maybe northern areas, especially up in the Delta, may tend to really increase rainfall as we go later this winter and early part of spring. So even though we're talking about warmer than normal conditions, that doesn't mean we're not anticipating any winter weather. Usually around our CWA, we'll have one or two winter events a year. I know a handful of years ago, in the early 2000s, we went quite a stretch without much winter weather at all, but generally over the last 5 or 6 years or so, we've had, this is borne out that we've seen at least a couple of events per year. And this is one particular event in 1968. It was actually in March, and this is one of the analog years, so they had really heavy snow across kind of along in northwest of the Natchez Trace corridor. Not to say we're expecting that this year, but this just goes to show what can happen. Even though you have a weak La Nina, you can still get pounded with some pretty good winter weather events even late in the season. So overall, I know I've kind of been talking about a mixed message here as far as the cool season goes. But for severe weather, we are expecting better chances for a near normal season with some potential for above normal severe weather due to La Nina conditions. It's interesting that for a while now, November has been known as our secondary severe weather peak across our area, but obviously we really haven't got much in the way of severe weather and not a whole lot of rain at all this November. But we've really seen that kind of to be the case when you have La Nina conditions building, is that it remains pretty dry from early to mid-fall and even well into November. And it's not until really late November into December that things start getting more active and you get more rain. And it looks like that trend may be holding off, maybe holding out this year as well. So yeah, we're really going to be watching out for some severe weather episodes this season. Sometimes when we get big El Nino modes, it seems that we can have a lot more confidence that we're not going to get a lot of severe weather, but in this case, we're still going to have to keep our eyes open for severe weather all throughout the cool season. For flooding, overall drier weather is expected. Thus, flooding potential will be below normal. That's especially the case right now and going into December because it's been so dry lately. But, you can get some big rain events in the cool season, no matter if it's La Nina or El Nino modes, and they can ramp up flooding potential pretty quickly. So as we start to get more active going through December, we'll have to watch out for that. Late spring may offer a better chance for bigger rain events, as that one graphic of rainfall expectations going into later this winter and the spring kind of showed some potential for less, for at least in northern zones and the Delta, for rainfall to maybe start trending above normal. And last year we had a weak La Nina as well, and we had one event in April of 2017 that caused quite a bit of flooding around the area. So just because it's La Nina, especially as you go later into the winter and early spring, it doesn't mean you're not going to have any flooding. So winter weather and cold, overall the temperatures look to run at least a little bit above normal. However, these analog years we looked at do favor more opportunities for cold snaps. So due to the look of several of the analogs supporting winter weather events, the forecast is for better chances for at least one winter event. That could be snow or ice, but we're kind of expecting as we go through the winter, it's pretty likely we're going to at least get one event we're going to have to be dealing with